We have a quorum present, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to call the meeting to order for Monday, August 7th, 2023. It is 6 p.m. and this meeting has been called to order. Paul Mostella is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and Denise is going to follow it up with the board mission statement.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Paul.
Tolosa Midway Independent School District educates every student to be a lifelong learner, a person of integrity, and a positive contributor to society.
Thank you, Denise. Our next item was public comment. We don't have anybody signed up, so we're moving on to the agenda item number 1, presentation regarding agreed resolution and action plan signed by TEA and TMISD regarding complaint INV 2021-06-102 and any matters incident thereto.
Madam President, members of the board, we have Mr. Juan Cruz with Juan Cruz and Associates that's going to be conducting the presentation.
And with me today is Valeria Reyes as well from the office. Okay, Chris, okay, there we go. That working? So this presentation is going to be largely based on the materials that I gave you. Just to walk over and for the record, what the board has in front of them is if you open the document, you have a table of contents. And in that table of contents, under tab 1, is going to be this presentations that I'm going to be going over. Tab 2 is the Notice of Special Accreditation Investigation, which basically began on July 12th, 2021. The third document is already something that the board has approved, which is the Agreed Resolution and Action Plan that the board approved back in May of 2023. Then the fourth document, the fourth tab, is the resolution, which is the third agenda item that you have before you today, acknowledging the district's noncompliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses, which is also a required action item tonight. The fifth is the Lone Star Governance agendas and signing sheets, which you all have, done already. The sixth tab is your written superintendent evaluation schedule, which is also up for review, right? It's all part of your agenda. The seventh is not an action item, but it's there for the record because all these documents have to be submitted to TEA, which is your EIF local policy adopted by the board on July 17, 2023. And last but not least, on your 8th tab is the meetings of the July 17th. Their draft, not yet approved by the board, but they also have to be submitted to the agency. Basically, everything that you see here and these documents will be submitted, uploaded electronically to the agency. The only thing that is missing, which will be, hopefully we can have them between now and next week, are the draft agenda meeting minutes of tonight's board meeting, which also have to be submitted to the agency. And then once you finalize the meeting minutes and approve them, then we'll go ahead and submit that to the agency for consideration. So let's go over this tab 1, which is the presentation that you have before you, and I'll do the first part of the presentation, then Valeria would do the other half. Basically, in a nutshell, the school districts, there was an investigation of TMISD related to several things. The first was alleged grade tampering. The second issue was students receiving an unfair grade advantage. And the third issue was retaliatory matters taken against the former superintendent. So that was the scope of the investigation. So when an investigation, when a complaint is submitted to the agency, what can the commissioner TA do? And what you see there in this slide is basically the commissioner can order what they call a special investigation, which was basically what has happened for the last couple of years with respect to TMISD. Special accreditation investigations, when do they arise? They can arise in different ways. They can, when there's issues related to governance, or when basically there's issues with respect to the administration of policy or state law. What can the commissioner do in terms of what is his authority under the law? And this has already been tested by Houston ISD. If you recall and read in the newspapers that they took it all the way to the Texas Supreme Court, challenging the commissioner's authority. And the Texas Supreme Court was pretty clear that yes, the Commissioner of Education has the powers that he has been given. He can issue public notice of the deficiency of the board. He can order a public hearing, which we're going through tonight. He can, require action plans to be submitted. And as you go down the line, you see basically it could go worse and worse, from appointment of a monitor, conservator, to a board of managers altogether. So yeah, the authority of the commissioner is based on statute. And if the, badly performing school districts, and I'm gonna plug in, if you wanna go to my presentation at TASB, I'm gonna be presenting with TA on the, when TA takes over badly performing school districts, coming up, so you'll see that. And one of the things that we're gonna discuss is the powers of a conservator. And I've worked with public school systems that have conservator. At the end, the conservator basically takes the place, in many regards, of a principal of a campus, of the superintendent, or the board. And they can approve of any action of either the board or the administration, as you see here. What they cannot do is basically change your tax rates, adopt your budget, or basically, or say, we're gonna select trustees in this manner. So, but other than that, really, they do have the authority to sit in that chair or whatever chair that they want and take over the daily operations or the board governance operations. The Board of Managers is pretty much worse, because I've also worked with a school system where the Board of Trustees sits in the audience and the Board of Managers sits there. And they can be usually, when they're in post, they're up to 2 years that they take over the school districts until, the commissioner thinks that they have a board that can kind of take over. And the worst that can happen is the revocation of school districts altogether. And people think, well, school districts never get closed down. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Asherton ISD is the school district that I represented back in the day. And every Friday, we would call a special call meeting at noon because we needed money to pay the employees. Because against the administration's recommendations, the board had decided to pass a lot of big pay increases, which money does not grow out of the sky. And what ended up happening there is that after a while, when, the notes came due and we couldn't operate, now you have Carrizo Springs Consolidated ISD, and there's no more Asherton ISD. So yeah, badly performing school districts can be closed down just like a business. And you see that now more and more with, I think the commissioner's office being, not, I wouldn't call it heavy-handed, but they definitely are accountability and looking over in terms of even big performing or big campuses, big school districts like Houston ISD. The powers and duties of board of managers is basically they do everything that the normal board does, including the hiring of a superintendent, which is what you're seeing right now at Houston ISD, right? They brought in now the former, Dallas ISD superintendent, and now have basically displaced the superintendent that the Houston ISD has, and they're going to be running that school system until the commissioner's office, the board sees some improvement. So the powers of the board are suspended during that time that a board of managers is placed. So you never want to get there, and there's ways to, and not that, we're anywhere near that, but those are the issues that I think that people may be asking in terms of like, if we just don't do what the agency is asking us to do, those are the worst case scenarios. And to close out my little portion of this presentation is basically who pays for the conservator, the board of managers, so on and so forth. That's the ISD, the Independent School District. The agency's not gonna allow you any more funds for, and it wouldn't make sense, right? Why give school districts that are performing badly money so that they can acquire professional services? And conservatives, are, or monitors that are appointed, they are paid by ISD funds. So why did this whole thing kind of happen? And Valeria can kind of take it over from here. Just you press this.
Like Mr. Cruz discussed, on July 12th, 2021, the district received a notice of the special accreditation investigation. Prior to that, this is a brief timeline of events. In December 2020, the former superintendent informed the board and then administration that there were questionable grading policies that were in place at the high school. As a result of this, the district hired a third-party outside counsel to conduct a review into these practices. They provided a report, and we're going to go into a little bit of their findings in a little bit. On July 12th, 2021 is when the district then receives notice of that special accreditation investigation that brought forth allegations of unfair grade advantage to certain students, retaliatory actions taken against the former superintendent, and alleged grade tampering. It took about a couple months until the district was notified by TEA. It was in January 2022 when the TA investigator assigned to this case finally scheduled interviews. In February of 2022, interviews were scheduled with board members and also administration at the district and personnel. From February 2022 until basically February 2023 of this year, there was nothing in between that you guys got from TEA. There was no follow through. Obviously, in January 6, 2022, the district hired a new superintendent, Mr. Van Mitri. In February 14th of 2023, the board held a meeting with, or Miss Kimberly Boone was a part of the meeting, Mr. Paul Arriaga, Mr. Van Mitri, and then Mr. Cruz were a part of a meeting with the Deputy Commissioner of Governance for TA, Steve Leschelop, basically saying, hey, look, it's been over a year since you interviewed district individuals, and there's been no conclusion to this investigation. What can we do to close this out? As a result of this, the district sent a position statement to TEA saying, this is what has happened, this is what we've done. Is there any way we can come to a resolution? On April 14th, TEA sent a resolution, and then on May 1st, you guys voted and approved the agreed action resolution plan. So the TA complaint, this is language directly from the complaint from that was received on July 12, 2021. You see there's allegations of unfair grade advantages for certain students, allegations of grade tampering, and then also allegations of retaliatory actions taken against the former superintendent. The alleged violations, it claimed that there were 6 violations of the Texas Education Code that are listed there. So collaboration between the board and the superintendent, employment policy, to do with nepotism, issues with the superintendent, issues with required curriculum, issues with an arbitrary grade given to assignment of grades, and then issues with grade changes, so finality of grade. The O'Hanlon and Demerit and Castillo reports, this is the report that I discussed earlier. This is the report that was given to the district in February 2021 prior to the district being put on notice that there was a special accreditation investigation. Legal counsel, the outside legal counsel basically found that there were questionable grading practices. It was kind of easy to just submit a grade change. So what they did as a result of receiving this report, the district took action. They implemented a grade change form. They've also updated the student grading guidelines, and they've also adopted administrative procedures that have been in place since prior to the 2022-2023 school year. So this has been in place for over a year. And this is just the corrective measures that were taken. So now there's a grade change form, there's grading guidelines. There's specific grading guidelines that are posted on the website. There's written procedures that have been provided to all employees. Going into a little bit about the TA investigation, as I mentioned earlier, it took about 6 months from the moment the district was put on notice that there was an investigation until district staff and then and board members were interviewed. Over the period of 2 days, there were about 16 interviews. So all of these individuals were interviewed. All the trustees that were on the board previously, some that are currently on the board right now. And then there were follow-up interviews with the following individuals in February 22nd. From February 22nd until May 1st, until we finally have a conclusion. So the agreed resolution that the board, the agreed resolution action plan that the board heard and then approved on May 1st, 2023, basically has the following action plans. It's the information that Mr. Cruz covered already. It's information that's in your board packet. All board members, as of last week, you guys took your Lone Star Governance training, August 1st and August 2nd. That was one of the agreed action plans that you guys had to conduct before August 15th. So you guys have complied with that one already. Number 2, you have already made changes to your board policy EIF, basically saying, hey, look, no more students are going to take the off-campus PE course. And if you do take the off-campus PE course, you're going to go and follow the procedures, because that was one of the corrective actions that TA found, that certain students, I think it was about 5 students over the course of 5 years, were allowed to take an off-campus PE course. It was offered to individuals, but not many people knew of it. And if you're going to offer an off-campus PE course, you have to follow through and provide that information to the Commissioner of Education. That's what was not done. So for number 3, this is where we're at. We're going to have the public hearing today. We have also a resolution where the district acknowledges and admits that they did not offer this PE course to all students, and they did not follow through in that request or provide it to the Commissioner of Education for the approval. The action item number 4, you guys have completed this on May 1st. At that meeting, it was the plan was discussed. It was voted upon by all the board members. Board President Kimberly Boone read the agreed resolution out loud. It's been introduced into the minutes. You guys all have completed that already. And then on May 2nd, it was also signed by the Commissioner of Education's designee. Item number 5 is agenda item number 4. You already have written procedures for your formative and summative evaluations of your superintendent. One occurs in January and then another one occurs in March. Your agenda item today is basically just putting it in writing. And then agenda item number 6, should you have any public information requests for the agreed resolution and action plan, you will release it to the public without requesting an opinion from the Attorney General. And then 7, 8, and 9, agreeing to comply with all provisions of the Texas Education Code, to cooperate with the Texas Education Agency for any request for information. And then obviously it's already been signed by the Commissioner's designee. So thank you guys. Any questions?
Thank you for all the information.
I've got information.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. For presentation only when board action is needed. So now action item number 2 is the public hearing on agreed resolution between TEA and TMISD in regard to complaint INV 2021-06-102.
Madam President, members of the board, we will at this time open the meeting up to any questions, comments from the public regarding the agreed resolution between TEA and Tolosa Midway ISD.
If there's none, you could just say that the record reflects there's no participants or public hearing, and go on to your next agenda item.
Okay. We don't have anybody here that's ready, that has any comments, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next agenda item.
Close public hearing.
But it will be on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Make that clear.
All right.
Close the public. Or did you already do that?
The public hearing is closed now. Discussion/action item number 3, discussion and possible action on a resolution of the Board of Trustees acknowledging non-compliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses.
Madam President, members of the board, before you is a resolution acknowledging non-compliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses.
Can you read that, somebody read it into the record?
Please do that, Mr. President.
Oh, it's right here.
Tab number 4.
Tolosa Midway Independent School District, a resolution acknowledging non-compliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses. Whereas Tolosa Midway Independent School District is a public school district located in Nueces, Texas, and whereas on July 12, 2021, the district received notice from the Texas Education Agency, TEA, that a special accreditation investigation, INV 2021-06-102 investigation would be conducted into the district by TEA. And whereas the district cooperated fully with TEA throughout the investigation and was committed to resolving all complaints brought forth. And whereas the district admits that they previously offered an off-campus physical education PE course to students and did not obtain approval from TEA for the off-campus PE course in accordance with board policy and state law. And whereas the district admits that they did not offer or make the off-campus PE course available to all students, and whereas the district and TEA entered into an agreed resolution and action plan on May 2nd, 2023, and whereas the district has taken steps to ensure compliance with all state laws and regulations, and whereas the district is dedicated to addressing the concerns raised by TEA and implementing the agreed resolution and action plan to continue providing the best education for all students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Tolosa Midway Independent School District that, Section 1, the findings and recitals contained in the preamble of this resolution and adopted by reference and incorporated as if fully set forth in this section. Section 2, the district will not offer off-campus PE courses to district students for the 2023-2024 school year. Additionally, the district has amended board policy EIF local and shall not award state graduation credit in physical education for private or commercially sponsored physical activity programs conducted off-campus. If the district elects to offer an off-campus PE course to students for subsequent school years, the district will request approval from TEA and comply with any and all TEA regulations and statutory requirements. Section 3, this resolution shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by a quorum of the board. The superintendent of schools is authorized by the board to take such further actions necessary and appropriate to implement the intent of this resolution without further board action. Approved, passed, and adopted this 7th day of August 2023 by the Tolosa Midway School District Board of Trustees. We will need a motion.
Let me do a recommendation.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution acknowledging non-compliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses as presented.
I will make that motion. Yeah.
I second that.
All right. So we have a motion by Paul and a second by Ben. to approve the resolution acknowledging non-compliance with board policy and state law for off-campus physical education courses as presented. Now we'll vote. All in favor? None opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right.
Are we good?
Just one more, number 4.
Agenda item number 4.
I forgot about that.
Discuss and possible action on the adoption of a written superintendent evaluation schedule.
Madam President, members of the board, before you is a supplement for your board operating procedures, which you adopted to formalize a formative evaluation of your superintendent in January of each year and a summative evaluation in March.
Is there any discussion?
Do you find that effective, it being so close together?
I have no objection to changing
Would
any of the
a
months.
November formative be?
That would be, whatever the board chooses. I would have no issue with that. I would like to keep the summative in March to coincide with the annual nature of my employment.
Yeah, I realize
That
that
makes
one.
sense.
So that's what I was talking about, changing January in the fall semester.
When did we do the first one, April? Or when was,
It was at Christmas time.
Then we did
And then we-
another one,
We can
2
also,
months ago.
just a few months ago.
because,
February.
The formative usually is to set up the goals, like this is what you want him to work on. So, yeah, if you want to move it up to November or even earlier, I think it's positive,
It's a formative,
when, I'm sorry. go ahead.
a formative can be done at any time.
Yeah.
So, timeline, now the summative is the most important one. But the formative one is to catch up, see how we're doing, are we meeting our outcomes to our inputs, right?
Very well done.
Yeah.
We have to, that's a scorecard.
And you're right, there's not a lot of time in between there.
So outside of November just being the end of the fall semester, I think another idea is when STAR results typically do come back. Is that in late August, September timeframe?
They
Or
came back Friday, but that is later than they've ever been.
normal, yeah.
Yes.
So what about September?
I'm
Is
really
that
fine.
too, anything?
I'm fine. It's really your prerogative.
Because formatives can be done
Anytime.
anytime, especially when you have goals you're trying to achieve, on those
Well, I think-
inputs to get your outcomes.
Well, and having the goals in place prior to just 2 or 3 months.
So you're going to have your goals that you can certainly amend them, but you will have specific goals in September of this year, which is vis-à-vis the strategic plan.
And about September, October, November, you give you 3 months. And then you can do it again, and then another 3 months or a month, it's just,
I think this year,
Checkups.
November is good, and then probably for subsequent years, change it to align with when we receive results.
Okay, so you're looking to want to do the formative evaluation in November and the summative evaluation to stay in March. Is there any discussion about that? Are y'all all in agreement with that?
I'm fine with that. It gives us
that's
some
good.
time.
But
Okay.
like I said, you can do them anytime, especially once they're established, and then it gives you 3 months.
Yeah.
Do it every 3 months if you like, and do it every month.
It is recommended that the board approve the adoption of a written superintendent evaluation schedule as presented.
I will make that motion. This is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the superintendent's evaluation schedule as presented, but modified to November for
For Jan-
formative.
For January. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Leo. A motion made by Paul Mistella and a second by Leo. All those in favor? No opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, we're gonna excuse ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Good evening.
Have a safe trip back.
All right, thank you.
Please.
Chrissy, we'll be in touch. Okay.
Thank you, have a safe trip. Oh, there's your dinner.
All
Oh,
right,
that's all good, thank you.
moving on to agenda item number 5, a report from Ed Vantage.
Madam President, members of the board, you've heard from the financial, although that's going to change to the better, that you'll get another report on the 21st. We've discussed multiple times the possible scope of a bond, which you'll hear again on the 21st. But you haven't heard from an entity that I would like, if we move forward with the bond, from a professional entity that helps with the messaging and voter turnout. Rona Johnson is the founder of a firm that does this type of work called Advantage. She's a former trustee, and at this time, I'm going to welcome her to the meeting and turn it over to her. Good afternoon.
Can she hear us?
Can you hear us, Rona?
No.
We're on mute.
Volume for the TV, maybe. She's going, okay, that's good.
Seems like this happened the last time.
It's always funny, because like your last meeting worked perfect. You just talked about it.
There we go.
Can you hear us now?
Well, no, that's what
I
it
can
is.
hear you.
Bye. Well, welcome. This is our team of 8, and we're glad you could find time to join us. I know you had jury duty today. Did you get picked?
Actually, I got struck from not one, but 2 jury panels. I had went through 2 jury selections here in Montgomery County, and I guess was not fit to serve on either one. But it
Congratulations,
was
I guess.
almost an all-day adventure, so.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you,
Tried to
Ronna.
do my service.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm really glad that this worked out, so.
It did. So if you can go ahead, I've already given them a preview.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, board members. I really appreciate President Boone, Superintendent Von Montre, and the board members. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Been looking forward to visiting with you and sharing a little bit of information with you about not only our company and our approach to elections, but also just to answer any questions you might have and talk a little strategy. I need to ask if it's possible for whoever is the host of the Zoom meeting, if they could let me share my screen.
Of course I can.
Thank you. Okay, let's try one more time. I've been crunching some numbers, so there's lots of good voting information that we're collecting. Here we go. Great. All right. All right. So welcome again. I am Ronna Johnson. I'm the CEO and founder of Advantage Strategy Group. We are a full-service marketing and public relations firm here in Texas. We have been in business for over 12 years now and working with school districts around the state, over 100 communities now. We've done over 100 elections. We have a 95% passing rate, and so I'm really excited to share that with you. We do lots of different kinds of things in marketing PR, so as you can see, everything from branding, messaging, whoops, hit the wrong button there, public relations, media relations, all of those great things. We do a lot of work with data, and so we get to use all of these things when we're working in elections. As this is not a surprise, of course, but elections are changing and have been changing and evolving rapidly. It is a highly charged political environment. Usually this November is a pretty sleepy election cycle. It's typically a low turnout cycle. However, we've got some interesting dynamics going on this fall that are going to be even more interesting than normal. So along with back to school and football season, we have a special session on, I think, parent entitlement, which is public school voucher or private school vouchers, I guess is where we're headed. And potentially on the November ballot, right now we have 14 amendments on the ballot, and they're very diverse amendments. The biggest one, of course, being the homestead exemption. So we're going to see a little bit of action this fall while we are talking to your voters about the bond. There may be other people talking to them about other things, and so I'll explain in a little bit about how that impacts turnout and what we can possibly expect. As you can see, we know Texas. I mentioned earlier that we've worked in over 100 communities. I don't think there's 100 flags here, but some of these are repeats. The green flags represent school districts with up to 5,000 students. Orange flags represent up to 30,000. Blue flags are districts over 30,000. So as you can see, we cover everything but the Valley and Big Bend. And I just really keep hoping that someone in Lajitas or somewhere out there wants to do an election. So not only could we put a flag there, but we could actually go there. But we cover the state. We do have a 95% passing rates on propositions, so not just elections. We don't just say, hey, we won A and we count it as a win. We're committed to winning every proposition that boards and potentially communities, when they're designing proposals for bonds, we realize that it's not our job to design the work, but it is definitely our job to deliver the work of the community. And so we're very committed to doing that. In some election cycles, we work in school districts, fourth largest district in the state with almost $1 billion in bonds. At the same time, we're working in Blackwell ISD with a $14 million bond. So all of these are very different. Every community is very different. And I'll show you in a moment how we customize all of our work. We don't cookie cutter any of our work for our clients. Campaign management is obviously the biggest backbone of the work that we're doing here. And so we start out with looking at our voters and the science of winning. So past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. If anyone is married or has kids, that is no surprise to you. But voters tell us a lot. We know a lot about what their intentions are and if they're going to show up or not based on what they've done in the past. So we always start with data where we can, and I was just really thrilled and happy when you all decided to do the survey. That will be probably the most impactful investment that you will make in this journey of bringing this bond back to the community. And this survey gives all of us a lot of really rich quantitative data and direction on what voters know and understand and where we may have gaps, what they know about your business. And there's some interesting things that I saw when I looked at this, so I'm happy to answer any questions about that as well. Once we look at that, we pull some data, we pull a lot of public information from school district and from the county, and we call it kind of a data cocktail. We pour a bunch of data points into a Excel file or a database, and we purchase some data and append that voter file to make sure that we have up-to-date information about the voters in the political subdivision of your school district. Once we do that, we create segments, and then we push those voter segments through all the available channels that you have in the district. And as you'll see in a moment, there's a lot. But we know a lot about voters. We know their partisanship, obviously. We know if they're active. So I'll show you in a moment. I was working on a turnout model when it was my turn to come into the meeting, but I can share that with you. We know if they're parents, sometimes staff members, board members. We know their age, and we might know, we know all of their demographic data, but we might know other things about them. And what we're really looking for here is a public education or an education issue voter. And so once we kind of identify those voters in your community, I will create a turnout model. So that's actually what I was doing, just about finished with, and I've got some really interesting things to show you. I know Matt Gamble went through some of those things with you on your survey, but I can also clarify those. So we look at the turnout because every election cycle in Texas is different. So no May elections are the same, no November elections are the same. And it really depends on what election cycle you're in as to what your strategies are, what your tactics are, what your budget will be as a school district and as an advocacy group. And so it's important to understand that, to determine what levers you need to push as you move through the cycle. Voting analysis, so we will do 2 reports on the actual voter file of the political subdivision, whether you have 2 precincts or 200. We break the voter file down after we clean it up into about 30 segments, and we start to look at total numbers of voters, absentee ballot voters, which will be important this fall, but not as important as next year. We look at voters by age. We look at them, whether they're staff or employees of the district, potentially parents. We look at early voters, gender not so much, and we look at partisanship and location of voters in the district. And we also break that down then into a target. So if you remember, when you ran for the board, there was probably someone in town who said, here's the list of people that are voting. These are the ones you need to call. That's the same thing. We do that too. And I didn't mention it, but I was also a board member for 2 terms in Georgetown, and I'm proud graduate of the best class of leadership, TASB class of 2015. So forgot to work that in, but that's a big piece of who I am and how I came to be doing this work. So same thing, we create a target list of voters, but our target is a little bit different than just these are the people who vote. We're looking for other attributes. So we have an algorithm that will kind of pop those folks out of the total voter list. And then we look at those voters on a good old-fashioned map. So we've sent some of these already to your district. They're probably there in your superintendent's office, or Chrissy probably has them, knowing her. She seems to be on top of it for everything. But we were actually looking at this map last night and really looking at the survey data, the voting patterns, and you may be also very familiar with these as board members, but really looking at what kinds of voters we can find. And what's nice about this map is you have these really tight pockets of voters, and so that they're very densely located. Okay, once voting starts, and I don't believe that you had this last time, but we are able to take that voter file and we create mailing lists and phone lists and things like that the district will use, and potentially the community advocacy group can request through a public information request. But really what we're doing here is working on moving that voter to the polls. And so once the election starts, every day we'll be sending reports. So I know that you can't read these, but I'll just kind of sum over. It's just some of the same segments that we looked at earlier: total number of voters, the average age of those voters, how many mail ballots came in. We're looking at that particularly in high military and obviously senior citizens voters to determine, when and where they're voting. Mail ballot voters are very important in elections. And I know you guys went out in an even year. They were very important in even years. Because they vote a month almost before anyone else is voting, and they're getting that wonky ballot language. This is a property tax increase. So we really are watching those mail ballot voters and making sure that we're communicating to them. In this election cycle, they will be voting right after Labor Day. They could be voting as early as the 45th day, but they have to, by law, receive a ballot by the 60th day before the election. So a solid almost 2 months they're voting, and a lot of districts miss that window and miss a chunk of votes. And as you can see, and you probably know, 10, 20, 30, 40 votes is a lot of votes in your district in this cycle. It can be the difference maker. So we want to make sure that we're communicating to them up front and we're tracking them as their ballots come in. We also look at those target voters. We're tracking parents, staff. We look at age very carefully. And then we're looking at these segments here. You'll see one right here. This is from Texarkana ISD. It's a nice district to use in terms of size because it has enough voters that all of these are filled in and enough precincts, as you'll see in a moment. So it's just a sample report. But you'll see that we had identified about almost 2,000 parents here, 500 1,200 of them have voted and there's 1,300 left to vote. So every day, we're not just giving you this report saying, here's how many people voted. We're packaging that up with Excel spreadsheets for every one of these categories so that you can work parents not voted. Because it's great to check the list, right? And see if your friends and your cousin voted, but really it's working the not voteds on your list every day that are most important. So we're providing those so that you all are in control of your election from now until election night. And if you have the motivation and the resources, and those resources isn't just money, sometimes it's time, it's talent of your volunteers. But if you have the motivation and resources, I think that's why our approach is so successful, is we really give our clients the data that they need, the science, to put themselves in the best position to win. And we work with you all the way until election night. So we don't ever take our foot off the gas. Same report here, it's just by precinct. So in your district, precinct is really important because you do have those clusters. And so we may even break those precincts down into mini precincts and have even smaller clusters. The other thing that we do is we provide voter turnout. So this is some of the same data that you saw on the other reports, but this one is more targeted to campuses. So you're not going to be able to see it, and I'm sorry for that, but our clients call it the bubble report because it has all these little red circles and different colored circles and check marks. And this tells you all and your superintendent on a daily basis how the staff turnout is going. So I always say that the old axiom in the elections is you just need 50% plus one. Well, I am here to tell you that I've lost 7 elections in 12 years, and I am the 50% minus one. We actually did lose an election in a very small school district by 1 vote, and we had a board member and his wife who did not vote, and it was on the front page of the paper. So we try not to let that happen again and make sure that at least everyone knows and making progress toward goals. So we'll talk about it in a moment, and I know Matt touched on this, but it's really hard to change voter behavior in these low turnout cycles. About 5% of people typically vote this fall, and 95% stay home. So we have to do a lot, and this data comes in really handy to maneuvering and manipulating that turnout to make sure. And what I see in your numbers is really interesting. Your folks know how to vote. They just don't know that they can vote twice a year. So we're going to have to remind them, and you'll see this in a moment, that they did know how to vote last November. They just need to come back and do it again this November. So our creative side is the piece of the work that most people really look to, that this is, what they kind of think that we're going to be working on. So campaign management, of course, we provide an online project management planning tool and Smartsheet. So we have a dashboard and about 3 or 4 plans in here that are disseminated to the district automatically every week. And so everyone can keep up with the progress of the work, what's on time, what's behind, and just make sure that everyone can stay communicated about what the projects are and what's coming. And we also create a shared workspace for us all to work together and keep our documents on track. And the last piece of that is we do provide a resource library. So when we're working on projects like, let's say, outdoor signs, and the team is like, well, what the heck is an outdoor sign? So you can open that, look at it, and make decisions about what you like, that you've seen other people do, and what you don't want to do. And so it helps us with the design and development process. In our work, content creation is everything. We really put a lot of emphasis. We call it content, could be storytelling, could be graphics design. But content is everything, because it's not enough for content to just be timely. It has to be relevant so that it's consumable. So if we're trying to target parents, or we're trying to target 18 to 49-year-olds, we've got to have things that as they're scrolling, that they will stop and look at and watch. And so we're very intentional about creative. Once we look at those targeting and segments, and we determine who we're targeting and what messaging and when, we push out that creative strategy through every available channel in the district and in the community. And that, of course, includes digital That's social media, your website, campus websites, emails, text. We use School Messenger or phone calls, call out system. We use print, a lot of mail. Backpack is a great channel. It's a great free channel that school districts have. But you also have marquees and football games coming up this fall. So there's lots of ways for us to get messaging out to the community, especially during a November election cycle. Okay, I just want to show some examples of styles of work, because creative, like I said, is really important. How we use color is important. This particular district is green and this really dark gold. And so we were able to bring in other colors here to help tell the story. It was 4 propositions, very complicated, about $650 million worth of projects spread out in almost every category that you could think of, including a stadium remodel. So how we use space on paper is really important, and how we tell messages. So we use a lot of infographics, a lot of color, and that really helps voters helps them discern very quickly what the most important messages are. So this district had failed a bond in 2021. They're a fast growth district out of schools and really needed to get this bond passed. So we added the vintage Spurs Fiesta colors to their palette. And once again, with use of a lot of infographics, charts, these kind of things, we're able to tell their story on print and on social media very quickly. So these are just, once again, examples of these kinds of charts and graphics that we use so that voters can start to see how the money is being spent. Lots of pictures. So even though you don't have renderings from your architect, that's okay. We work with your architect to look at things like floor plans, site plans, age of buildings, but we really can use what other school districts have done in terms of scope to show a voter, this is what's proposed. This is the concept. This is what we're moving toward, so that they can see furniture or technology or interior spaces and exterior spaces. Sometimes they just want to see parking lots and roads. It just depends on what's in the bond and how that bond is becoming a solution, and voters starting to recognize that this is not. And let me say this is a little timeout, but I always tell people, if you don't remember anything that I tell you tonight, the one thing I'd ask you to kind of bookmark is that bonds are not about taxes or bricks and mortar buildings. Bonds are about teaching and learning. And they're about either removing barriers that you currently have to teaching and learning, like not enough space, too small of space, condition, HVAC breaks down, we're spending too much money on that. We're spending too much money fixing old buses, and our kids can't get to events. All of those kinds of things would be barriers for your staff or your students. And so bonds can help remove those barriers. Bonds also open up opportunities and pathways that didn't exist before. So in your district, you're doing a couple of those things. You've got early childhood on the one end, you've got career and technology on the other end. Both things voters love, as you saw in your survey. And so that's really where the storytelling goes, is to give that voter an idea of what your problem is and how this bond starts to be a solution to that problem. So we've already started working on some things with your district as drafts. And we have some logos drafted, colors here that we've looked at, and even an ethics card for when you call your election. So we've got some things that we're sitting here ready to go whenever you're ready to go. So we've got that ready. Video is a big piece of storytelling for us. We see our most impactful messaging strategies carried through in video. So we will actually send a team of videographers to the district, and they'll create an overview video with usually 6 to 10 small videos, and told a lot of times by the practitioners, sometimes your coaches, teachers, and sometimes even students. We take all of that content and we build a social media plan. So you'll see social media posts at least 3 to 4 times a week, if not every day, as we get closer to election day. we just have so much content. I mean, even just things like, hey, voter, don't forget to register to vote. Just small things like that we're reminding them about, showing them that the mail is coming in their mailbox and to go look for it. Just those things will be a post in and of themselves. But we do a lot of storytelling. We actually do ads to the target voter list beyond your district shareholders. So folks that like your page would definitely see the ads, but we want to go beyond that to potentially those tax frozen seniors who may not be on your social media page, but we want to make sure that they get this. So our team will work on that for you. And this is part of that, those paid advertising programs. So Meta sees political ads completely different as regular social media ads. You have to be verified, and right now it's taking most places 6 weeks to 8 weeks to get verified to run political ads. So this is one thing that we're able to provide to our clients. We can come in through your pages and launch these ads because we are verified to do that. So back to the creative strategy, that's kind of our approach, pushing all of this content back out. And with that, I'd like to, if you don't mind, before we ask questions, I'm going to end the show. Let's see if I can do this. And I want to show you the turnout model that I was working on. Whoops, sorry about that. I don't know how to get this to go all the way up. Let's see. So this is a good picture of voter turnout. And like I said, I was just working on it right before you guys got here. So sorry, it's got a little bumps in it. But we're collecting this data right now. Obviously, we don't have a contract yet with the district, but we're in advance of you guys anticipating to call the election. We can collect a lot of this data once again through public information and collect some of it through the survey. So what we know about the district is you've got about 8,300 voters. Almost 6 out of 10 of those are under the age of 49. I think this is the highest I've seen. And this number has gone up considerably over the last 2 years based on a couple of things. Both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, since 2018 have been aggressively registering voters. But also we've just seen an influx of growth, in the state naturally. And so this is a really healthy number based on your survey results. This is fantastic. But look what happens to these folks, okay? So in the regular makeup, only about 20% of your voters are tax frozen seniors. In the midterm election, this young group, about 1,600 of them, almost half, 45%, know how to go to the polls and vote. But look what they do in low turnout elections. They completely forget about elections. They completely forget about voting. And so in May of 22, which will be most similar to this November because it has a homestead exemption and a few other things on it, we had about 283,000 voters, not even 3.5% voted. So that's extremely low, but take heart that the state average is between 4 to 6% everywhere. So as I said earlier, voter turnout doesn't change as much as we would like it to or think it should. But look at the inverse relationship. These guys who make up 60% of the turnout only make up 11%. Only 31 of them out of almost 5,000 voted in May of 22. So you can see right here, this is our first spot to go looking for. And I added November of 2019 here because there was November of 21 that had about 350 voters. So kind of not in the middle, but closer to May. But you can see these folks, they can turn out when there's something on the ballot that they're interested in. So in November of 19, 506 people voted, right at the state average, 6%. 50% of those were tax frozen seniors. Only 20% or 100 of that 5,000 voted. So this row right here is going to be the row that we can really target based on our survey data. This row right here is the row that we used to rely on to pass these bonds. But in looking at your survey data as well, only 36% of them know and believe that their taxes are frozen. So what that means is 2/3 of them either don't know or don't believe. So we can expect somewhere between, let's say 200, 225 of these. It'll be more because of the work that we do, and the amendments that are on the ballot are going to drive this up probably even more than this. But let's even say it's 300. So it's still less than 20% of this. We still have to watch every one of these because the weight and the significance that they carry, especially if they're reading that ballot language, this is a property tax increase, and they're voting by mail, or they're a regular voter. We're really going to have to watch this group and work with them, not just watch them, but work with them, because 2/3 of them don't know or believe their taxes are frozen. So any thoughts, questions? I know I've talked a lot. I'm probably over my 20 minutes, but I was hoping to kind of cover a high level.
That was great information. Very interesting there at the end.
I think Denise has a question.
Yeah, the science of winning. I know. I wish I had a crystal ball to go with that. I try to have a magic wand, but this is really the backbone of all the strategy, and all the creative that we work on is designed around this picture right here.
I have one question. I know you were talking about.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all ever approach, or do you have a way to get to the college students, the former students of?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have some strategies. Actually, we have a breakdown. It's sitting right in front of me, and I can tell you, 18 to 9-year-olds, you have 208 that are registered to vote. 20 to 24, you have 734. So between those two, you have almost 1,000, a little over 1,000, because this data is a little bit off from what Matt collected. But we have about 1,000 of those 24-year-olds. So when you're looking at a turnout of 500 to 600, 700, those young voters can be a big difference. So of course, we call it All-American Day, but all government teachers are required by law to talk about voting. So in the fall, we won't have as many high school seniors, right, that are 18 as they would be in a May election. But they can actually register to vote before they turn 18, as long as it's before Election Day. So you'll usually see about 1/3 to not half of the class be able to vote. But targeting college students and young voters is really important, and we do a lot of that work on social media. They are really interested in elections. They just don't understand when to vote. And one of the things that I've been talking to your superintendent about is one of the differences that makes this happen right here is polling times and locations. When you have the governor, lieutenant governor, and all the state reps on the ballot, right, they want polling open for the most part. They want more 7 to 7 days and weekend days. These elections right here, we tend to get 8 to 5 polling and only 2 days of 7 to 7. So where do you think these guys are between 8 and 5? In your district. They're at work. They're probably not even in your district between 8 and 5. They're in Corpus, they're out in the patch, they're, they could be at school, but most of them are not able to vote. And that's why you see these numbers so much lower. So that would be definitely a strategy opening up polling times and locations and making sure that you have Saturday voting helps you get these numbers up and helps you get closer. You won't get to this, there's no way, but it's very possible with what's on the ballot that if you have a organized and motivated PAC, an advocacy group, that they could potentially get this number up to 800 to 900, and if they were able to work that.
Question.
Yeah, so
Any other questions?
can you hear me? The voter turnout model is exactly why it's so important for Tolosa Midway to go out during an off November election cycle or a May in order to educate parents to get to the polls and pass our bond. I had 3 questions. The first one being, on the map that you first showed, you had 1 green flag in South Texas. What school district was that?
Gregory Portland.
Nice, okay.
We
So that-
worked in Gregory Portland on their recent bond that they passed.
Okay. And then I liked everything you were talking about in terms of campaign management. Can you explain how much the school district can actually intervene and interact with the voters who have not yet turned out to the polls? Or is that tasked to trustees or a PAC or, yeah?
Great question. So I don't have the dedicated time to do a full ethics presentation for you tonight, but I'm happy to come and do that for you if you'd like, or do it by Zoom. But basically, I'm seeing, I was a trustee, so I didn't say this, but I was a PAC chair twice myself for 2 bonds and 1 TRE as a community member. I was a PTA president, PTA council, Education Foundation, Partners in Ed, you name it. Like, that was kind of my journey as a parent and a community member and then a board member. I did 3 elections as a board member. The key to not the key, but the ethics piece about political advertising, it used to really be that bond councils, I don't want to use the word warned, but they presented the election code as you really shouldn't get involved. More and more, I'm seeing, as we're working in successful elections across the state, we're seeing board members at their personal comfort get involved in the political action committee. They're chairing the action committee. I just had an attorney in Texarkana who was the treasurer of the political action committee. I had 4 board members in Tyler, Texas, run their PAC, and Tyler ISD, Northside ISD, they ran theirs. Gregory Portland had some board members working on theirs. So more and more, we're seeing, first of all, trustees getting involved with turning out voters, with doing persuasive messaging and all of those pieces on their own time with their own resources. So can't use district resources, can't use district email, can't talk about it on the dais, but on your own, when you're not in the boardroom and you're just a regular citizen, if you ever feel that way, you can participate in a PAC. So how do we manage turnout? That is a great question. Managing turnout is identifying these people name by name, and the number 1 job of that PAC is to go through that entire voter roster if they can. If they can't, you'll see right here, I'm working right now to fill in a target number, and it'll be about 25% of your voters when it all shakes out. It usually is somewhere around that number, even in a low turnout election. It's their role, and you're welcome to plug into that if you feel comfortable doing it, but it's their role to work that list, and they can work it the free way by calling, texting, and door knocking, or they can raise money and pay people to collect that information from them much faster, much easier. Everybody does it their own way. But it's that piece of the process. The district will be doing factual voter education. So making sure that not just your regular stakeholders, but these voters that you may not even know, that never cross paths with your district, that are going to vote, these senior citizens particularly, or age 50 and older. I didn't say this earlier, but these guys right here represent, let's say, I was going to round, but I won't, 42% of your voters right now. In this cycle, they will represent anywhere from 80 to 90% of the turnout, age 50 and older. So when Matt talked to you about non-parents, this is the group right here. Non-parents still paying taxes. That's why they're not yellow anywhere in here, because for me, they're a known quantity. I know what they're thinking about. I know where they are in life. I'm living that life myself now. And so they're a known quantity, and we know who they are based on either their affiliations or their voting history. These guys are a little bit different because they do have that tax frozen benefit that we can communicate to them about. The question is, will they believe it? So they become risky. This group right here from your survey, and I believe I have it up. I pulled it up. Yeah, this was the map that Matt gave to you for the distribution of their interviews that actually kind of correlates pretty nicely to voter turnout. So he's showing you here this blue area, just this small blue area, and y'all know because you live there, and I looked at it on a map last night, and I'm going to drive it when I come there, but this blue area will make up 50%, and then whatever these little areas in here will make up another 36% of the vote. So just in terms of targeting, 50% of your vote is going to come from this area, just with very little other information. So I'm not going to do this too quickly because I don't want to make you seasick. But as Matt showed you guys, here's your senior tax freeze. Only 36% of seniors know about the tax freeze and believe it. So that means 2/3 do not know and believe. And those two things go together now because of that ballot language. So just knowing it isn't enough. We see in most districts that when people have no tax bonds, like Gregory Portland, their voters actually believe that their taxes are still going up. They don't believe it. So I always tell people, just skip the no tax bond. It's not going to work for you if you think that voters are they're going to vote for that because it's no tax. It's actually the opposite. They don't believe it. So this is the, if you remember your initial and informed, where this is where voters started today, pretty split or actually against the conversation. So if the election were held today, like right now, this is pretty close to what you could expect to happen. But once we give voters all of that great messaging and you're working with them as a district and your PAC is working with these voters, they're getting double the messaging, facts, and vote for. And even though the district isn't working the vote, the district's keeping that wheel turning because there's information going out all the time. This PAC is now starting to identify how many of these voters are moving in this direction of getting this information. There are going to be some that the more information they get, the more they're against it. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, everybody knows that person. For whatever reason, they don't want to have this conversation. But here in Tolosa Midway, there's a lot of people that care very strongly about the community. They care strongly about their kids, their schools. So it's up to us now to do this work. And Matt has shown us we can move from 25% strongly for to 36, and we can move to these numbers, but we have to do that work to do that. And so the two of those, the district and the community PAC piece, go hand in hand on the turnout.
I had one last question. What main platforms do you run campaign ads on? Or
What
does it
main
depend?
platforms do we run ads on?
Yeah, or does it depend
Okay.
on the population?
Yes. Yes, so we use Meta, which Meta is now Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. So all of the ads that we place through Meta will be there. We do Google. We can also do now display ads and programmatic ads, which would be in-app or app-based ads and even TV. So we could potentially create a 15 or 30-second video that someone could see not only on YouTube, but if they were watching YouTube TV, it could come up. So we haven't included that in our conversations yet with the district, but we have the ability as a team to place ads pretty much anywhere. And I mean, I think it's safe to say that everyone realizes that social media is the new newspaper. That's where people are digesting the majority of their information, or in-app based type of news or entertainment. They're getting those ads. There are some of these platforms that we work with that can even do
in-game ads. So where students could see certain types of ads. And we use those for recruitment to get kids to enroll in CTE or get them to come to your district. So.
I have a question for you, please. Given the time constraint, we want this in November. We're coming up on maybe getting something together in September. How do you work that with the time constraint to do all of this, which is great. I like it. We need this bond in this district. I'm very much for it. But the time constraint, how are you going to do all of this, present all of this to the community with the time that you have?
Well, that's also a great question. So we have a process where we can onboard clients within 24 to 48 hours. This is all we do. I mean, we're marketing and PR, so we can turn these campaigns around and launch them within a couple of days. We have, I've talked to Steve now for several months and introduced him to Bass Lease, and so I've had the ability to work or at least be aware of what's going on with your survey, your scope of work, some of those main decision points that you have. In terms of doing the data piece, collecting public information is, it's just like anything. It just takes a little bit of time, but once we get it, we build those data files. If you think about it from the timeline that I gave you, if you call your election here in the next week or so, actually, I'm
The
looking at my calendar.
21st.
You would need to be having a piece of mail going out right before, right after Labor Day. So, it's just very doable. Sometimes we get hired in districts 7 weeks out from Election Day, and we still have a 95% passing rate. So
What's the
it's very
typical?
doable for us to
What's your
launch a
average?
campaign, especially with 12 or 13 weeks.
What's your average, if you had to average it out for a district to get your involvement? Because we don't want to be sending them stuff in January, February. They'll forget about it.
Exactly.
So there's a method to this madness, right? But what is typical for you for weeks of notice or weeks to join the parade, for lack of a better term?
It depends because we have some districts that contract with us at the very beginning before they even start committee work and go through the whole process with them. Most of them are like you guys where they're either in the middle of committee work or they're moving toward calling the election. But the election is designed to where the voters get messages in timed segments. So not all voters are going to get certain pieces of information like things that are posted on district social media. But for voters who are not on your district social media, we're going to take those ads and push them beyond that content to make sure that grandma and grandpa are seeing those ads, even though they didn't like your page. So some of it is just tactics. There's also a lot of strategy that's involved. For instance, let's say you call your election and we're in the process of doing social media ads and we're doing mail and your superintendent's doing lots of robust community presentations and all of those things are going great. And then we get an out of town opposition group that decides to come in. I don't know if you had that last time, but happens everywhere. You might see it this fall. They've been very active since the midterm. Then that's something that I can help with because we see that everywhere and we have a lot of strategies. So it isn't just always tactical, like these are the 10 things we're doing. It's like these are the 10 things we're doing and there's another 40 things on top of that. And in every district, those things are different just depending upon the landscape, the political landscape. And like I said earlier, we all have to be aware going into this that we are going to have a special session on vouchers. School funding is going to come up. There are a lot of backslapping for the tax relief, which was great. School districts didn't get that tax relief. Taxpayers got it. So there's a big disconnect there for taxpayers, and we're going to have to do a lot of voter education on that to remind them that you don't have money to make repairs right now because you haven't really gotten any increase to the allotment. And so you're just going on fumes. And those are all part of the things that we tell voters as you call your bond.
So basically what you're saying is we have time to get all of this done, even with legislation coming down and stuff like that. To get the education
yeah.
out that we need to get out.
I'm sorry, Chrissy, can you say that last part again?
To get the education out that, I mean, because obviously we need to educate our voters, right, on all levels of age groups. So we have enough time to meet the needs of all of those groups.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And the information will be sent out in Spanish also?
Yes, we can do, we typically do for communities that want English, Spanish, we do a dual, one piece of paper or two pieces of papers. We have plenty of formats for that on all of our print for sure.
Okay.
I have a question. How important is it to have specific information on the bond, on what's on the bond, have specific information on what's getting built, what's getting repaired, the actual dollars? How important is it to have like detailed information so that you can get that out to to the community?
So it depends on the bond. Everyone is different. What we typically do is we think about this way of packaging it up so that once again things are grouped together so that voters can start to determine, is this new construction, is this renovations and upgrades of these buses, technology, what is this? So we try to package them together and give them an idea of the total of those things. It isn't always as important to say, I'm trying to think of a project in your case where you might be utilizing, let me think 1 second, where you might have demo, you might have site prep, you might have additional parking lots. It doesn't have to be to that level of detail, but the project itself should talk about, let's say the junior high, whether you decide to do it next to the high school or the brand new one or the primary. It's going to have very specific number of classrooms, what kinds of things are in there, Wi-Fi access, what kinds of teaching and learning tools are in there, how many science labs. I mean, all of those things we peel back and we explain at a very granular level what you're using the money for and why you're doing it. And the why is actually more important to the voter than sometimes the what. Because you can tell them, I'm going to spend X amount of millions of dollars on this thing, but they don't, you'll see, well, you've been in that situation where bonds fail because they come back and say, I didn't really understand what was in it. I didn't understand what they were using the money for. So that's the storytelling. And like in your situation, we may have CTE students doing videos to explain their current lab space, why it's inadequate, or why maybe the tools are too old for them to use for today's certifications, whatever those barriers are that you're having for CTE, or you're trying to get more kids in. Your superintendent was telling us the explosion that you've had. So just having more space and having more kids getting either college hours or work-ready experience and certifications, those are the kind of things that voters go, okay, now I understand what you're trying to do. It's the whole picture, not just the building.
Any more questions, Sean? Comments? No?
A lot of good information.
Okay.
Thank you, Rona. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys. I hope to see you in person soon.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Nice to meet you as well. Good evening.
It's just report only. Next agenda item is number 6, to discuss and consider the approval of an athletic donation.
Madam President, members of the board, this is great news. Paul, would you like to, you were really the reason this came about. Can you feel comfortable talking to us about how this came about?
Yeah, so one of the things that I had talked to many of y'all before was, we have a very, very successful alumni. Alumni is like, we have many people out there that are doing really good in a lot of different industries. So I just happened to be at a Pride of Texas basketball tournament, and I said, hey, Coach O'Neill was there, and I said, man, well, how's that weight room, the weight room we worked out in, right? And he opened the door and he said, Coach, he said, you don't want to see this. You know, it's pretty bad. We got in there and it was in pretty bad shape, so I took the initiative to reach out to one of our prominent alumni. I asked him if he would be willing to help us renovate that. He said absolutely. He said himself he wanted to remain anonymous, which is even more noble, right? Like, he doesn't want his name on it. He just wants the kids at TM to have the opportunities he had. He had won, I may give him away by this, but he had won 2 state powerlifting champions power championships out of that weight room. So I called him on a Friday. He was out of the country. He called me back 2 weeks later, said how much you need. I told him, and he said, I'll send you a check. So he gave us a pretty substantial, I don't know if, do we say the amount? He donated $53,000 to us to renovate the weight room.
That's awesome.
So that
Thank
was,
you for
and I want to applaud Coach O'Neill, you know, because he's a AD football coach. But the thing to remember about this weight room, and he's truly about the kids, is this weight room's not necessarily for his football team. It's for the swim team, the basketball team, both boys and girls, the soccer team, the ones that, you know, soccer practices over there on the practice side. To go to the weight room, they got to go all the way by the football field. Now, you know, they'll have to coordinate. I'm sure everybody's want a piece of it once it's all nice and, you know, ready to go. But, you know, this even band, if band wanted to get in there, right? Like, there's a lot more kids that can be touched by this. So I appreciate Coach O'Neill really, you know, helping me get through that and not, you know, trying to, you know, say, well, you know, the football team really can't use it. But he was for all the students, which he's always said. So I think that's a tribute to him as well. So.
Thank you. Coach O'Neill, Mr. Alvarado, any comments before I turn it over to Mr. Carroll for the logistics?
I'll just say that it's a profile of a TM student. We want them to leave us to be successful wherever they go. So we are for all students. There's not a particular group that we care about. It's TM students. And that's kind of the reason we did it. I think that weight room kind of ties us together as an athletic program, that we know that the kids are doing that. And we've worked really hard to add a program called the Movement Over Maxes and Feed the Cats, and it's good for all athletes. It makes them better at everything that they do, and I appreciate that very much.
And just to whoever the donor is, we could just say thank you so much from.
I did. I tried to convince him, and he's like, no, absolutely not. I told him they said, no, this stays between me and you, and I said, well, I can respect that. So, but I will definitely send him a thanks and maybe even convince him to come out maybe after a game or something to see it. So.
Mr. Carroll.
So that donation was made to the Athletic Booster Club, and tonight we're just asking, the Athletic Booster Club is going to turn around and give that money to us. So tonight you're just accepting the donation as per board policy. Anything over $25,000, you have to approve and accept.
And, you know, one last thing, the goal of him was to make sure we did it right. And I know Coach O'Neill and Mr. Van Matry, they've shown that they do it right.
Thank you.
You know, with the football field and the things we've done around the school. So I told him, you don't have to worry about that. We're not gonna, you know, we're gonna do it right. So, and I feel confident in that, so.
I just have one question on that. Why did it go to the athletic booster and not directly to TM?
There was,
Because the athletic booster is a 501c EZ, which threw them over the 50,000. And, you know, so I don't understand why it didn't come directly to TM and putting the athletic booster club in a predicament.
Well, I will say the Booster Club knew what we were doing. We didn't just say, you're gonna take this. So,
But my question is, why?
but they
didn't it just
should,
come
if
to-
it was a problem, I feel like they should have said, hey, this is gonna put us over our 501c, like,
Easy,
you know, we didn't, the decision was made to use them. He asked, who do I write the check to? I said, definitely don't write it to Paul Arriaga.
oh, yeah.
But write it, you know,
But
we
why
came
not
up with the
TM?
Athletic Booster Club. That was just a decision the team made. Was it the right decision? I don't know. I think it is. I mean, if it put them over, it would have been very helpful if they would have told us
it's the
that.
first I've heard of that.
Yeah, they did not tell us that when we asked them. So we asked them, they met, they talked about it, and then they said yes. So,
I'm not sure, are you meaning that since now they've got gross receipts, they're going to have to file a regular nonprofit form instead of the EZ form?
Yeah, they have to file that grievance form in order to keep them in compliance with it, which is no big deal. I just don't understand why it didn't come directly to TM.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was just my question.
Yeah, that is a question.
Huh?
What's the advantage if it comes directly to TM, I guess would be my counter question.
I mean,
Doesn't throw the booster club. It's-
What, if it's not that big a deal, that it's still in the booster, like what, if we would've gave the check directly to TM, what
it was meant for
advantage?
TM, so I don't understand why it didn't just come directly to the school.
What's the advantage of that? I mean, what's the argument? What if it would've came directly to the school, what does that change?
I don't know. I'm just asking, why didn't it come, if it was for TM, why did it have to be funneled through the athletic booster? The athletic booster has nothing to do with TM business. But that's why I'm saying, it's a simple question. Why didn't it come to the school that it was benefiting?
I think it is coming to the school, it's benefiting, it's just going through a different avenue. I don't know that, I don't know what the challenge is. If your challenge where it went, why does it matter where it went if it ended up at the school?
That's what I'm gonna say, is the money is gonna be donated to the district, right? So just like the Education Foundation, you know, they collect everything. I mean, it's a benefit for the kids, all of them. Like Coach O'Neill was saying, it's something, spent a little over $100,000, what, year or two years ago? And then this edition should help it some more. So if it's for kids, I mean, my goodness.
I don't have a question about it being for the kids, Paul. I just wanted
No.
to see why it went not directly to the school district and to the athletic. That was my question.
Yeah.
Was there a benefit to that or not? If there wasn't, great, no big deal.
Yeah, but
That was just my question.
yeah, I agree with your question.
But I do know that the athletic booster is a 501c EZ, which should not have over $50,000 in their account. That I do know for a fact because I was on the board of that. So,
That's their status, or
and for the
EZ?
first 3 years,
Or the EZ is the,
we needed
is the
to get
form-
one
is the
real
form
quick. Yeah. The easy was because we needed to get one extremely quick, and the only way to do that was to get the EZ form. And that's what we did, but it allows you for 3 years, but you can't go over 50,000. If you do, I think it's a simple fix. I don't know that it wouldn't be, but I was just wondering why not to the school and to the athletic. But the end result is great. I mean, that's what matters, right? I was just wondering on the logistics side, why did it go that way? That's it.
Well, this is awesome, and a huge thank you to the donor that even wanted to stay anonymous. That speaks volumes right there. That's a lot of money for our kids, our athletes, kids, students. There's a lot of people that'll be using that weight room. I think the same equipment's in there that I use, so it's time to change it out.
That's not a lie, the super cat machines were in there, and we got them whenever I was graduating.
Super cat. What a super cat.
We're dating ourselves. All right.
Madam President, members of the board, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the athletic donation as presented.
And I'd like to make that motion that the board approve the athletic donation as presented. Do I have a second? Paul Arriaga made the second. All those in favor? No opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, agenda item number 7, discuss and consider the approval of the 23-24 Student Code of Conduct.
Madam President, members of the board, a unique aspect of having school start as early as ours does is that TASB, who we rely on to provide guidance in the Student Code of Conduct, doesn't get that to us till after school starts. So subsequently, we run 2-3 weeks of school on the Student Code of Conduct from the previous year. We have received that, And at this time, Dr. White's going to make the presentation.
Sure. Just along those lines, this is the annual update that we're bringing forward tonight for approval. A lot of the updates are concurrent and were made after the ending of the 88th legislative session. And so you'll see a lot of those updates being included from the 88th legislative session. Now that that's been finalized, that will then bring another TASB update in the next couple months. So you'll see the progressive nature of these updates coming forward. And this is just kind of the beginning of that for this school year. And so at this time, are there any questions about the changes for 23-24 or the updates? I will say the majority of the updates were a lot of wordsmithing to bring things up to kind of current speed. A lot of taking out a lot of the redundancies, trying to make it clear just about what really can and cannot be done, what school districts are able to do as far as discretionary decision-making versus what they can not decide to do, which are mandatory types of requirements. A lot of that centered around DAP and specifically about vaping and the need to then move more towards a mandatory placement for students who are found to be in violation of our vaping policies. And so there's language now there to describe how to go forward with that. Also too about ISS placements in the event that we are overcrowded in DAP due to too many students being placed in there. And so there's a lot of language on that. The other major update included the Crown Act, which if you're familiar with that acronym, that involves no longer being able to I would say segregate between male and female when it comes to grooming and hairstyle. And so students who come from a background that is cultural or ethnically aligned to how they want to express themselves through their grooming, that is permissible now. That cannot be something we dictate or create policies for. So those were the major ones that just want to make sure we're all aware of. And are there any other questions about any of the updates or changes?
I noticed all the wordsmithing in there.
Yes.
That was considerable.
Yes.
But of course, but it was good.
We definitely need to get the new vaping stuff coming from TEA. We definitely need to get that sent out to all parents so that is,
Yes.
they know what those changes are and what is gonna happen.
Along those lines, and this will come towards the end of the month, but that will be one of the agenda items at our first SHAC meeting of the year. And so that will be something that we kind of talk about, how do we want that to look? In discussions about vaping will also be discussions about opioids and fentanyl and just updates coming from the state on that. And so that's right around the time on a couple of weeks, and then the next month or so, you'll see updates coming from SHAC on that.
I was just gonna ask if, are we gonna update our FO policy to remove corporal punishment?
It's done.
It's done already.
Okay, sweet.
That's why you don't see it there anymore. There was like
Are
entire
you
sections of it
referencing on
that-
page 12? Yes.
So page 12.
Hold on a second.
Sure.
We talked about that this morning, and it does give the appearance when it says
And then it
reference
references
FO. And so I went to Policy Online, and it's not on there, but I think Dr. White has a good point to make about it being in there.
The reason why it was recommended to leave it, and we can adjust FO legal so that it doesn't give off that confusion about possibly being in our policy. Those are just strictly non-permissible aversive techniques. So that's not necessarily have anything to do with corporal punishment, which is its own separate category. This strictly just tells you what you absolutely cannot do under any circumstances, and then references its policy that speaks to the corporal punishment, which we don't allow. So hopefully that helps clarify some things. Any other questions?
Any comments?
Madam President, members of the board, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the 2023-2024 Student Code of Conduct as presented.
I'll make the motion that the Board of Trustees approve the 2023-2024 student code of conduct as presented.
Is there a second? Here we have a motion made by Paul and a second by Ben. All those in favor? No opposed, motion carries 6-0. Agenda item number 8 is a report budget update.
Madam President, members of the board, before Mr. Carroll gets into his presentation, I do want to say a few words about the construction of the 23-24 budget. Absent additional state aid and improved attendance and increased enrollment, the budget that we're going to make a recommendation to you on the 21st is unsustainable. It will call in 2024, 2025, significant cuts and reductions if we do not get any support from the state, which we're currently not receiving. There hasn't been a bump since 2019 with HB 3, and with a recommendation of a 3% across the board at the midpoint salary increase, which really is only going to account for about $500,000. We're looking at a $2.5 million deficit budget.
This year or
That's
next year?
Next year. That's unsustainable. This year, absent the budget amendment of $5.5 million for the stadium and the food service support, with the Flint Hills agreement, we'll be pretty close to a balanced budget because the Flint Hills agreement has an influx of about $1.6 million of revenue. Now, what could work into our advantage is receiving those funds after September 1st. And there's a real chance that can happen. What that will do is, on the audit, that will show a deficit for 22-23. But in reality, it will allow us to keep those funds, which are in excess of $6 million. We're going to have to send the majority of that to the state, but we don't have to do that till the following year, which means with the current yield, we would receive around $350,000 additional interest. The good news, particularly for the Tolosa Midway taxpayer, is because of the, I think, 26% increase in appraisal values and the agreement with Flint Hills that they're going to pay 100% versus 70-75, because of tax compression, we're looking at a decrease of perhaps 25 pennies, which is significant. I have rarely, if ever, seen a tax decrease of that amount. And then there will be, because of that decrease, we're not going to look at any recapture because of our reduced tax collections. That should help us with the bond. What I know is that communities who invest in their districts thrive. I believe that this is a generational election in November, which will be the driver for new students into the district. We're already seeing that at the high school. We have turned the corner, and now we're going up with high school enrollment, and I think that will continue to increase. Where we're seeing students that, according to Mr. Carroll, we've never seen before, is a decrease in the primary enrollment. That's concerning. But with the housing division that's going up on the other side of Rand Morgan, I don't know how many homes that is, but it looks like it's significant. And you hire me to manage this budget and not bring to you $2.5 million worth of cuts this time next year. That's my job, to keep that from happening. But it's also my job to be as transparent as we possibly can. Have I missed anything?
No, sir. I'm going to go into a little more detail about those points very quickly. There we go. Once again, I've got the PowerPoint, but if you look at the detailed sheets, and the first sheet, I think just kind of gives a summary of what I've already talked about, how we've adjusted the base budget with the previous updates. And this time, show I've increased, I told you I was calculating the property insurance premiums. I need almost another $700,000 to cover, and I'm hoping they only go up 10%. So that's the increase for that expenditure. But kind of cart before the horse, but since the recapture is down on the expenditure side, with the data I'm going to show you with the revenues, recapture will go to zero. So that'll reduce the recapture with the 51,000 that's in the base budget. And then we're looking at 3% average for the teachers, 3% of the midpoint for admin, which means you have to look on their salary scale, and whatever the midpoint of their salary scale, it's just 3% of that number. It's not 3% of their salary, gross salary, it's 3% of the midpoint.
So if you'll think back last year, which on average was an 8.5% increase, in the past 2 years, they'll average about 5.75% increase in salaries. That makes us competitive.
And then 3% for auxiliary, which that doesn't include Patrick's people, that's clerical and paras. And the numbers look ridiculously low for an increase, but I think it's because, remember, we go back to base budget, and then we look at, I think maybe with some of the turnover with the district, and even though we didn't really change our positions, we might have swapped a few teaching positions for a para position. Like Mr. Van Mitri said, the increase is not what, the salary increase is not what is causing the deficit. Revenues, like what Mr. Van Mitri said, I've got projected property taxes are gonna go up $1 million, but that's due to the 26% increase in the M&O taxable values once we got our July certified values. So, but the majority of that was, in our industry sector, although I know a lot of single-family homes went up too. Just the volume of our industry, it's mostly on them. And then what that means is, what the state does is with their compression is, since we had such a huge percentage of growth, that pushes us TM to what they call the floor, which is the lowest, and the MCR is maximum compressed rate. So the lowest we can go is almost 62 cents. But because we did the TRE back in the day, 2010, we've got almost 14 cents of compressed golden pennies. So you add those two together, and so our estimated M&O tax rate that we're going to adopt, and it's a real cool number, we can maybe remember it, 0.7575.
I don't think it's cool.
So I think it'll be easier to remember, but look at that, like Mr. Dimitri said, we're looking at potential almost 25-cent decrease in the M&O rate. So this is the state's method of, your values went up, so we're gonna compress you down, so your income is pretty much gonna stay the same.
Plus the exemptions.
Yes, plus, if you got your homestead exemption, you'll get up to the $100,000 which is, I guess, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but when the voters approve that, and then you get the additional 20% that TM offers also as well. And then the other side is, though, I'm hoping I've increased ADA. I'm hoping ADA goes up 5%. That's not just looking at enrollment. We were at 92%. If we can just bump that up, even if enrollment doesn't drastically increase, if we can just increase that ADA, even plugging that in, state revenue is going to go down about $3.2 million. But that's there is no new revenue. Like our president said, they want to do a special session, but it's gridlocked with vouchers. If the anti-voucher people don't give in, I'm afraid the other side's not going to give in either. But the bottom line is we're leveled out at approximately, we get about approximately $10,300 per ADA. And like I said, that top number, it's not the only number that's important, but man, it is so important. If we don't increase our ADA, the pie is not gonna get any bigger. And,
Our ADA is higher than most districts in our neighborhood. I don't know if you read the article in the Caller Times today, but Corpus is in the 80s.
And I know several other districts, they were in the upper 80s, they would have killed to be in the 90s. 92 for me though is just, man, it's depressing. I'm saying with a smile on my face, but man, if we could get back to where, closer to 95, 96 where we were. And I guess the hard reality is, man, I don't know if there is a normal after COVID. I don't know where our 300 kids went that we haven't got back yet, but that's just hopefully, but I think that's the message we would speak about. We need more kids here, and we need them to come to school.
Philip, your
That's where-
5% increase, is that where we're at now, or is that what you're estimating?
That's what, with what we've seen so far this year, enrollment's not drastically different from last year, at this point last year, but ADA is, our percentage of attendance every day is getting inching closer, or is closer to where we were before.
We're running about 4% higher on the 16th school day as what we were last year, apples to apples. That gives us some hope.
But like I said, unless the legislature does something for us, we're pretty much capped at the 10,300. It doesn't matter what happens, they're gonna take our ADA and multiply it by 10,300, and if we collected more taxes, when they do the mix, and if we have any recapture, it's gonna net out to that same amount. But like Mr. Ramage said, because we're at the floor, we've been compressed as far as we can go because we had such an increase in our values. Recapture is gonna go to zero because we're only gonna collect enough at the 0.7575. That's gonna keep us where we don't have to send any money back.
I guess, but we're still considered a recapture school district,
We
right?
are.
It's
We're
just,
still-
we're
we're still-
maximizing transfer students and buying attendance credits.
Well, we don't have to purchase any attendance credits because we're only gonna collect enough money based upon our projected ADA. It's gonna wash out. That's why we don't
So
have to.
just through transfer students?
That helps us, that's part of our ADA, yeah, that helps us, yeah. But it's not the only factor. But like I said, remember the 10,300, that's gotta cover everything. That's gotta cover electricity, that's not just for the classroom, that's everything for the.
Do we have any maintenance tax notes that's going off the debt of M&O anytime soon?
The next one, the one we did in 2010, it expires in '25. It was a 15-year note. We refinanced it once, but it'll end in some.
How much debt are we incurring with that?
Between the two of them, each one of them is about, I think we're down to like 700,000, and each one of them is about 300,000 and change, the payments for the two, because we have the one from 2010, the 15-year note that'll run out, well, it'll get paid off in '25, and then we just did the last one we're about 5 years into that one.
Do you understand the relationship with that and how that helps us? Because the maintenance tax notes, they're not voter approved, so they come out of your M&O budget. So that gives us, if we've got if we've got a debt service payment of in excess of $300,000, that's $300,000 that goes back into the budget.
Yeah.
Where voter approved debt doesn't impact our budget.
Revenues, I have no room to be conservative on this. I'm gonna say, if we have another year, what we had this year, I'm bumping up the investment income, another 500,000. If things stay the same, we should collect that much in interest. The investment pools are paying over 5%. And then I did do a little reduction of the chapter 313, $100 per ADA, because our ADA is not, it looks like it's not gonna, I still had it there at pre-COVID levels. I'm gonna be realistic, it's not gonna hit that. Then of course, this is still what's gonna get, by the time we come on the 21st, we're in the middle of a lot of these. We still have to look at Patrick's people about what we can do for them. And then we're finalizing the stipend calculations, which include CTE stipends. And then just a final review of the payroll benefits to make sure I've got enough to cover. That's TRS, Medicare, all the other related payroll benefits. And then we've started having budget meetings. We've had a lot of budget meetings. We're gonna wrap all those up this week to go through all the special programs to get those finalized by the 21st and then adopted on the 28th. And then I'm gonna check the utility costs, see if we've got any wiggle room there. And then we still have to finalize those for the bond election possibly or additional safety. And then, of course, we gotta maximize, increase average daily attendance. And we really just have to look at if we have any possible of, through attrition, we gotta look at anything that's going away. We gotta look and make sure, hey, is there a way that we can cover it somewhere else? We've just really gotta be more cognizant of that.
This is just a little thing, but why don't we use a different word than reduce? Why don't we use like streamline, optimize
Yes.
staffing? Because reduce automatically throws a flag. But there's places where we can optimize, right, or streamline. I think optimize is a better word.
And
I got a
then,
question before we went.
yes, sir.
On the ADA, do we have a district-wide, or anybody in the district that specifically seeks those 300 kids where they're at? I mean, like, if they're enrolled, do we actually actively, if we see them not in the seats, do we actively go do home visits and see where these?
We don't have a
Fall under
truancy
truancy.
We don't have a truancy officer, but I'm not an expert on that, but the thing about truancy is you can do everything you want to, but getting a judge to even hear the
Yeah,
cases.
no,
But
I'm not so much.
I will tell you that I do know all our districts in their local budget that they get per capita allocation, they all have attentive incentives. They promote, hey, if you come every day to 6 weeks, you got a chance to win a bike, or you're gonna get.
Yeah, that would be better than a truancy officer. I'm not looking for somebody to go handcuff them and bring them to school.
You get more bees with honey.
Yes, exactly.
But I
You
will
know.
say, all the schools have attendance incentives. I don't know if,
Do you, we have two principals here. You want to talk about what you're doing?
We do a lot of attendance incentives with communities and schools. So they're always advertising because they bring in, they have their own budget. And so high school also has communities and schools, so they'll be starting that up here pretty soon as well, because they're working together.
And the fund that funds our stuff for incentives is actually the parking little $15. And then that goes to a fund that we are able to buy stuff for kids to show up and do that. But to answer your question, right around when CCISD starts is when we start looking for no-shows. And most of the time, they've moved out of the district, and we have to verify that they moved out of the district. So we don't start now because, well, they're gonna use the excuse that I didn't know school was starting, even though I've been coming here 3 years. But that's what they do. So after CCISD starts, we actively start looking for no-shows.
And before I forget about the ADA, right, I mean, I'm just thinking about way ahead, like on senior skip day that we were missing the whole senior class. And, this is just food for thought. If whoever stays till 10 o'clock in the morning so we can get our ADA,
Right.
maybe we can throw them a free concert in the stadium or something, get some local bands, and instead of them going to the
I
beach,
think that's a really good
keep
idea.
it in the house and we get the.
Well, we're keeping our seniors all year this year.
Well, no, I get that, but on senior skip day, they're gonna go.
but I guess senior skip afternoon doesn't sound as cool, but hey, if you.
They don't get up and go anyways until then.
Yeah, exactly, they're not going, so we can keep them, I'm just.
No, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea, Ben.
It's a good
Or some
idea.
kind of a game.
Exactly.
And I have a question too. I'm regressing several slides with respect to the revenues. You indicated a dollar amount with the decreased state revenue. Have you monetized that 5% increase in ADA?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand your question, but I've got the funding template. So if we can get ADA to go 5% more than it was this last year,
Right.
that's how, I'm adjusting state revenue, I'm estimating tax collections, and it doesn't really matter now what our collection rate is. The states, like I said, they're gonna take that top ADA number that I hope increases 5%, and they're roughly gonna multiply it by $10,300, and that's how much money we get to keep. They'll look at our tax revenues, and then they'll supplement the difference with state revenue.
Well,
It
I
used
guess
to
let me
lag a
change-
year behind,
Let me
Leo.
change the way I said it. What does that 5% translate to dollars?
Yeah, how much is
more money
it?
is it?
I said monetized, but I meant
How much is it?
I would say,
roughly, I mean.
since the initial state funding deficit this last year at the lower was about $3.6 million, so I guess the difference would be, between, that's not really the accurate number, but I'd have to go,
That's okay, I mean, if you don't have, you can tell me later.
what I'd have to do is I'd have to go back into the 23-24 template and reduce the ADA and then run it and tell you what the difference is.
Okay.
I
That's
can do
fine.
that, I
Okay.
can do that, I can't
But
tell
you
you.
ran it with 90, didn't you? You don't remember the
Man, I've run that
revenue?
so many- I've run
Okay.
so many numbers through my.
But just off 3.5 is a simple math, 5%
Yeah, it takes
is
us out of the
150.
red.
Yeah, 150.
Yes, yeah, close.
That takes, I think that's what we're all sitting here trying to figure out is, we don't like red just like you don't.
No, I don't.
Well, it just looks back when you're at HEB and they say, why are we in the red?
Well, let me say a few things about that. A budget is your best guess. And what really counts is at the end of the year,
Well, yeah.
because our neighbors down the street adopted a 1.9 deficit budget. And I think that most of our districts are going to have to do a deficit budget. So I don't think we're unique in this year. It's a transition year, particularly with, I would have told you 6 months ago, there's no way the state's going to let the public education hang on the vines. I'm not so confident of that now.
They need to go sit in a governance class, remember what their duties are to students.
I agree.
Absolutely. This week, gonna be a really, really busy week. We're gonna have our budget boot camp at the end of the week so we can finalize what our federal grants are gonna pay for, so we can get that penciled in, so we'll be ready for that. That's gonna be really a lot of work and a lot of intense, but just to reiterate what Mr. Van Mitri said about the Flint Hill settlement, I never would have thought I would have told you that, you know what, maybe it'd be better if we got the money after September 1, because if we get the money, if we get the money in time, there's a tax survey that I have to send to TEA before I think it's due like the 28th of August. That's where I preliminarily tell them, hey, this is what I think our tax collections are for the year. And so if I do that, they're immediately gonna know, if we get the settlement before August 31st, they're immediately gonna know that, and then they're gonna bill me, and I'm gonna have to send the $5 million back in September. So I'm only gonna have the $6.6 million in the bank for 1 month. But in theory, if they don't, and it's weird that tax income for the district, it's called modified accrual, but it really means cash basis. The year we actually get the money in the bank, that's the year we record it as income. So, if we get it on before August 31st, it'll decrease the general fund deficit for the year that's just ending, even though we're 6 weeks into this school year. It'll decrease that, and aside from the factors we know about, the stadium improvements and the food service bill, the budget will pretty much be balanced. Our expenditures will pretty much be equal to our revenues, excluding those things that we know about. So, but that's what's causing our projected deficit budget for 23-24. So like I said, if I report it to TEA, I'll have to send the $5 million back. I'll get billed in September. If it comes in after August 31st, it's going to increase the deficit on the audit that's just ending, so that deficit will be bigger on the audit, but I can say I'm going to get that 1.6 next year, so the deficit we adopt in 2024 would be lower, and I get to keep I wouldn't know the $5 million until August of 2024, so I can park that money in and earn interest on it. So, part of me wants to call Ronnie and say, hey, put the brakes and pay pay me in September.
Will there be any arbitrage penalties for parking that from a year that you can think of?
No, not on that, no.
Okay.
No. Arbitrage applies.
Oh, that's right, it's just the bond.
It's just the bond money.
That's correct.
And that's $250,000 into our general fund, right?
Yes.
350.
Well, at
Yeah.
5%, it would be 250.
I mean, every single local government organization gonna have the same thing, Del Mar, the county. Like, is there an ask or?
Well, they don't have.
They don't have recapture.
They don't have to send.
No, I understand. Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, I gotcha. But still, is there an ask that we can do as a board?
I don't know, it seems, I don't know what the right word to describe it is, but, we've been in limbo for so long, and then we have this agreement, and we are gonna get this money, and I wish we could keep all of it, but it's just, one of those things, it seems ridiculous to say, man, okay, you can wait a few more weeks, and pay it to us, and get the judge to sign everything, and get everything to the tax assessor collector when they send the adjusted bill to Flint Hills.
Yeah, local money staying local is extremely important, and the amount of interest we would get from that. We can't pass a resolution, or is it just an informal ask, or?
There's nothing prohibiting us from doing a resolution. And I think perhaps that's a really good idea. I'll get one, we've got another agenda item.
I mean, but it could be different. It could be, Del Mar and the city and everybody else, they need the money right now. It might not be to their advantage to wait till September, I don't know.
Well, they may have flexibility with who gets paid and who doesn't.
We're in such this unique situation that.
I don't think it's, unless it's illegal, I don't think they would be adverse to keeping the money local.
It's already been years.
It's gonna get paid, it's gonna get sent to the state, and it helps our kids.
I'd just rather do it in August of '24 than
Yes, I
September
would
of
too.
'23.
Well, the impact that it's gonna have on our district is huge.
And then, like I said, for the debt service fund, we're planning, to keep the same rate. We're at 15, a little over 15 cents. But we'll defease whatever we have to do. Yeah, our values went up, but we'll defease whatever we can to keep that rate at 15. And that'll help us in the long run too. We're
Paying off debt.
We're getting debt off our books even sooner, so. I think with the huge compression that we're getting on the M&O side, and this is the way to go. Like I said, this year we're gonna defease about 225,000 in debt, because we did the same thing last year. We had a little bit of increase last year. To keep the rate at 15 cents, we're gonna defease before the end of the month, a little bit more, a little over 200,000. Obviously, this year, I work with Victor Kyoga to tell us, I'll give him the number of this is what I need to keep the rate at 15 cents. And he'll come up with the amount that we can, because y'all have to approve that. I guess we'll probably do it on the 28th when we adopt the budget.
And if we, a bond is how many?
You're gonna have, I'm gonna bring to you 4 options on the 21st, with a cap for 3 of the options being around 165 million. I haven't gotten the total figure from the architect yet. Option A will be the bulk of the bond, the CTE center, the new junior high, security, maintenance, school buses. I'm assuming that's going to be in the 140 range. Proposition B will be the natatorium. It has to be separate. That'll be I don't know, I haven't seen any figures, I'm just pulling this out of the air, 5-6 million for bulkhead replacement, air conditioning, what?
Filter system.
Filter system, locker room, renovate,
Sport thing,
the scoreboard, sound
What do you
system.
mean by it has to be separate?
sound system.
The law requires a natatorium or a performing arts center to have a separate proposition.
Almost
Oh, okay, now I get you.
extracurricular.
It can't be lumped in.
Extracurricular.
And then,
Separate in the bond,
and
okay.
then Proposition C, which we already have figures on that, would be about $4 million. That would be new tennis, stands, covering, turf for baseball, softball. So you as a board are going to have a menu of choices. The aggregate figure would be around 160, 165. Based on these numbers, would be an 8 penny increase over a 3-year. We're not going to sell $160 million worth of bonds the first year. So there'll be a very small, if any, tax increase. That is the preliminary work. We will also, and anticipating calling an election. If you don't, then we'll just not have the agenda item. We'll have a resolution that any funds that we expend prior to the bond, we can repay the district through bond sales.
Say that one more time.
Any expenditures that we incur, we can pay ourselves back.
So like, once the bond gets approved, we might have some minor expenditures that we can go ahead and start doing, but until we actually get the proceeds.
You can't do that without a resolution from the trustees. So that's what we're looking at.
I have a question, since you brought up the different options. When are we as a board, okay, my first question is, on August 21st, when you propose this to us, is that when we're gonna vote to put it on the November?
Yes, sir.
So when do we as a board get all these menus so we could study them and I'd have 2 days to look it over the weekend so we can make a decision?
Well, as far as the scope, the maintenance scope hasn't changed from the November 22. What has changed is, and it's the CTE Center and the junior high. You've had a presentation on the CTE Center, and that's when Paul made a really good point that, are we building for growth? Well, we are now if we continue to use what we currently have. What you haven't seen or been privy to would be the junior high conceptual rendering. And that, we've haven't had a lot of time since the survey, and we've had meetings with the junior high staff to see what their vision is. If you want to have a meeting prior to the 21st, we can certainly do that.
I would just like to be well informed before I make the decision if I'm gonna support putting it on the November ballot. And I don't think,
it'd probably
I
be a
don't
good
think
idea
from,
for the board to know what's exactly
well, I don't
being
think Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and
discussed.
Sunday is enough time for me to make that decision. So,
Really, the only information that you
I don't
have.
know anything about the natatorium.
The only
Either.
the only information is the natatorium, baseball, softball, tennis, and the junior high. Everything else it's been before you.
Are we not doing an early childhood center after all?
The primary now turns into an early childhood center because it was built with restrooms in every room. So if the bond passes and we're able to build a 7th and 8th grade campus, then we'll have a transition from 2nd grade, we'll go to the intermediate. So the early childhood center will be the primary. It'll be pre-K, K1. The intermediate will be 2, 3, 4. We'll move 5th grade over to the current middle school and turn that into a middle school campus for 5th and 6th grade and a professional development place for training. The junior high will be a 7th and 8th grade campus, about 82,000 square feet. And then we'll have the high school with the CTE Center. Game changer for the district.
I would just like to see the specifics.
You will. You have. Not all, but
So same question I asked Victor. If we adopt a 16-cent tax rate as opposed to the 15, and utilize the spare money, or on the M&O side, and then when we do file the bonds, switch that 1 penny to like bond money, would that help us in our deficient year? And would that allow, I guess, us to be considered recapture again? Or no, because,
The only thing that'll make us recapture is at the end of the year, when they take our ADA and multiply it by what our maximum entitlement is, they'll look at our taxes, they'll look at our state, what we're eligible for state revenue. And if that number's more than 10,300 times our ADA, we'll have to send that money back. It just depends upon what that ADA number is, if we have to send money back. But you said 16 cents, were you referring to the debt service rate or
it's on the previous slide.
on the,
No.
yeah, this is the debt service rate. And so we can use the fee cents to maintain the rate, but normally the tax assessor collector is gonna say, well, you can only use your lowest tax collection rate from the last 3 years, and we know what your tax base is now, we've got your new certified numbers. And then I tell them, that I give them the schedule of the debt payments that we do owe. These are the debt payments we owe in the next fiscal year. There's a constraint, we can't just set the rate on what we want to. We fill in the gap with saying, well, we're gonna defease, we're gonna pay off this debt early to help to maintain the 15. Because normally, with a 25% increase, 26% increase in values, that number would have to come down.
Yeah, I
Because we have so many.
But is this that max? Because I think Victor said last time, and this
No,
was
the max-
before
the
Flickers
max-
was
The
set
max,
up.
your debt service rate can go all the way up to 50 cents.
Yeah,
So,
and we don't need Keesnick's approval for any of that. do
yeah,
we?
for
Just the
that,
board.
because our debt payments will go up, therefore, we need to tax more to make sure we can make our debt payments. But we can also use, we can use once we start selling the bonds, if the bond's approved, we can look at, okay, here's what our debt payment is now, here's what our rates, here's what our values are now. We could probably use it to where we can just keep it at 15 cents and absorb the 8 cents and just defease less debt, if that's what we want to do. But we have to look at the situation every year kind of has to stand on its own.
so I'm asking, the difference 1 penny can make for this district, would that be beneficial in the 2023-2024 school year?
It's not gonna, this rate is not gonna help.
This
the
just
general
goes
fund.
for the debt, right?
This
It doesn't
only
go
goes
for
for the debt.
expenditures.
No, but paying off your debt INS?
We're paying off INS debt early, we're not paying off M&O debt early, we're only paying INS debt off early.
You can't commingle those
Oh,
funds.
yeah, I understand. So what's the M&O rate? That was a 0.75, 0.75?
Right now, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be waiting for T. We already told TA what our first tax survey is. They've given a preliminary rate, so it's gonna be the 0.75. 0.7575.
75.
And that's the max we can go because it's compressed down.
We can't increase that one unless we have what they call they used to call them TRAs, now they call them what, vaders?
Yeah.
And you can't have a vader, first you have to have an efficiency audit before you're even allowed to.
Okay, you said this last
to have a
time.
vader.
I'm caught
So,
up.
we are capped, we have to go to
You could
the
do one in
floor.
May.
We have to go to this maximum
wouldn't want
compressed
to.
number.
No, I wouldn't think so.
And then we can add our golden pennies that we have, our compressed golden pennies from our TRE back in 2010, right now, without going to the voters again, that's the maximum we can set our M&O rate at.
Understood. And one last thing. Homestead exemption increasing for 65 and older and disabled, even if it's by like $5,000 or something. I think it would go a long way in marketing for an off-year election bond with those folks. Still no consideration?
It's not my call. When I discussed it with Victor the latest time, which was after the board meeting, he said in his professional opinion, it wasn't in our best interest to do that. I didn't press him on why, but he'll be before you either next Monday or the following Monday. We can certainly get more, I can give him a heads up that it's going to be asked. Good news along the lines of more lead time, Mr. Benavides, is the architect just tells me that he can present the total scope of the bond at a workshop next Monday if the board's available to meet. I think that'd be a good idea.
I would be extremely interested in seeing the whole bond,
Yeah.
not just
We
specifics.
can do that. Victor hasn't replied back, but I don't think the financials are what your big concern is right now, knowing what we know about he's given me an updated analysis that I can provide at that meeting, and then he can provide details unless, he may be able to Zoom. If not, he'll be here on the 21st.
And I'm not, I guess is, since you did the interview on Channel 3, I've had a lot of questions. Well, what are y'all doing? I know bits and pieces.
Well, let
but
me say about the interview.
Yeah.
I have no control on what they put on there. The interview wasn't about the bond election. The interview was about the taxes and Flint Hills, and we had what I thought was an off-camera, off-the-record discussion on.
Never
Right.
with them.
Either way, and I stand by what I said. There was nothing I said that was something that you've never heard of before. This has been a very long process. I'm very proud of the investment that we've made with getting all the stakeholders, the community meetings, the staff, the professional external people. We are ready to do this. Now, having said that, whether we do it or not, it's not in my lane. That's the prerogative of the Board of Trustees, but as superintendent of schools, I'm extremely comfortable with the work we've done.
I don't have a problem with the work you've done. What I have a problem with is when I get asked a question in the community and I represent the community because they voted us in, it's not to have an answer for them. That's where I have the problem. So that workshop would be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
So I could answer questions.
Sure.
Because ultimately, we are the Board of Trustees and we were elected to make sure and make right decisions for the district. So I just want to know what we're doing to the extent of what we're doing at all times. That's it.
Any other questions? I was at the end, right now we have the regular board meetings on the 21st, and then a special meeting, the public hearing on the 28th to adopt the tax rate, or to go over the budget and then adopt the tax rate.
So the workshop for next Monday, would that be a special called meeting also?
That'd have to be a special call meeting, yeah.
Before, sorry.
Definitely by the 21st, that's where I said, that's where we'll definitely, you can take action. We'll have the compensation plan, hopefully all summarized. So y'all can go and possibly take action on that. And then hopefully I'll have budget should be basically done. I just need that extra week to do all the public information. Then I gotta put the notice in the paper and I gotta do all that stuff. It just, helps me get everything done.
And kudos on your first rating, A Superior.
Yes, congratulations.
That's important for the public to know.
Yes.
And this might come in our next general meeting, but how much of the budget is actually utilized by the different?
Yes, that's the other thing, I'm spinning not spinning my wheels, but I'm doing two things. I'm trying to wrap this year up, I'm trying to get the next year budget, and I'm trying to get the percentages so you can see where we stand.
And then,
You will see, I'm just gonna warn you, you will see, if I get it ready on the 21st, there's gonna be some significant budget amendments to line everything up, to cover everything.
But that's not unusual.
No, it's not.
We want it on the 14th. No, I'm just kidding.
and then on the 21st, you said you may have all the compensation
Yes.
packages ready. Does that include, because previously I asked for what all the stipends were for the district and how that pay scale, and y'all said it would come with the budget package.
We can definitely have the breakdown of all the stipends. Because I'll have the numbers. I haven't broken down, I kind of haven't split out between athletics and then the regular ones. If you look on the colored one, on the payroll page, I've got them kind of broken out. So yeah, we'll definitely have all the breakdown on that.
And then, I don't think I need it for the 21st meeting, but before the actual budget meeting on the 28th, can we get everything like as a pre-read beforehand?
Yes, I'm gonna do everything I can to get things sooner than later,
In
yes.
advance, yeah.
That's why I'm hoping that pretty much the 21st is gonna be, that's pretty much, nothing's gonna change much between the 21st and the 28th.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have that pretty much finalized, so what you see on the 21st is, it'll be boilerplate on the 28th. I just need that extra time to meet the legal requirements. Right.
So is everybody that's here okay with a special called meeting on Monday? That would be August 14th, am I correct?
6 o'clock?
It would be more of a workshop.
Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
I'm good.
Paul? Miss Stella?
Yeah, we can make that.
No, I'm retired.
He loves to tell me that, doesn't he?
That shoe's starting to feel good, isn't it?
All right, there's no further business?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. It is now 8:27 PM with no further business to discuss at this time. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Ben beat you, but you can second it.
up already.
You want a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor? No opposed, motion carries 6-0. It's 8:28 PM and this meeting is adjourned.